The true measure of a society isn't how it treats its wealth, it's how it treats those with no voice. When a country welcomes its animals with kindness, it quietly reveals the compassion of its people. Day 3 at the Sainte-Marie Gem Show reminded me that this journey isn't only about crystals. Sometimes it's about the people, sometimes it's about the culture, and sometimes it's about the little things that unexpectedly touch your heart. One thing that has completely stolen my heart is the French love for animals, especially dogs. Everywhere we go, there are dogs, walking through the streets, sitting beside their families in cafes, relaxing in restaurants, staying in hotels, shopping in stores, even walking through one of the biggest gem shows in Europe. You don't see signs saying no dogs allowed. Instead, you see dogs treated exactly how I believe they should be, as members of the family. As the poor mom to my two beautiful dachshunds, Oscar and Gracie, this has been incredibly emotional for me. Oscar, our little warrior, is paralyzed. He suffers from seizures and is incontinent. He simply can't be left alone for long periods. Back home in Canada, that's a constant challenge because so many places simply aren't pet friendly. Being here reminds me that another way of living exists. It reminds me that compassion isn't always spoken. Sometimes it's quietly reflected in everyday life. And I think that says everything about a culture. The next thing France reminded us of is just how powerful the sun can be. Forget warm summer weather. The French countryside this week has been absolutely brutal. Heat exhaustion is very real. By mid-morning, the air feels heavy, there's barely any breeze, and every step feels harder than the last. Even the devil would probably ask for air conditioning. Yet somehow, the show must go on. People often ask us just how big is the gem show really is. It's difficult to explain until you've experienced it yourself. The Sainte-Marie-aux-Mines gem show stretches throughout the entire little town, with exhibitions spread across multiple venues, marquees, historic buildings, and outdoor displays. If you genuinely wanted to walk every hall, every tent, and every outdoor exhibit, you could easily walk well over 15 to 20 kilometers in a single day. That's before you've stood talking to miners, vendors, geologists, and old friends you've made over the years. It's exhausting, but it's also magical. People often think every day at a gem show is filled with incredible finds. The truth? Some days are absolutely amazing, and others you can walk for hours and not buy a single crystal. Because we are not here to simply buy crystals, we are here to find the right crystals. High quality, fairly priced, sometimes rare European minerals that simply don't appear at the big American gem shows. But finding beautiful crystals is only part of the journey. Finding honest people is even more important. We are constantly searching for miners, families, and vendors who are knowledgeable, transparent, and passionate about what they sell. Every crystal has to tick every box before we even consider buying it. Sometimes the sad reality for our vendors is their shipments never arrive because they are delayed in customs. Imagine traveling halfway around the world, paying thousands of euros, only to stand at your booth with almost nothing to sell because your shipment is sitting somewhere in customs. It's heartbreaking in many ways. It's not that different from us still waiting for Air France to get back with our missing luggage. Today became less about buying and far more about learning. It turned into a full day discussing one of my favorite subjects, Smoky Quartz. More specifically, Irradiated Smoky Quartz and the incredibly rare Morayan Quartz. One of the things I love most about gem shows is that learning never stops. No matter how many years you've been collecting, you never know everything. We spent hours speaking to Brazilian vendors, our American friends, mineralogists, geologists, and collectors, comparing specimens and asking questions. We also came across beautiful Arkansas smoky quartz from miners we've worked with before. In fact, many of you will remember the incredibly beautiful irradiated Arkansas smoky quartz we sold from the Tucson Gem Show earlier this year. The very dark material we sold was fully disclosed as gamma irradiated, And that's important. Gamma irradiation doesn't create smoky quartz from clear quartz. The crystal has to be natural smoky quartz to begin with. The treatment simply deepens the color, creating that rich black appearance that many collectors love. Nature does exactly the same thing underground over geological time through natural radiation. Treatment simply speeds up what nature is capable of doing over immense periods of time. Quality of the Arkansas material we found here in France was beautiful, but because American minerals are imported into Europe, the price was nearly 2.5 times higher than buying directly from the source. That's something many people don't realize. European dealers travel to Tucson and Denver to buy American minerals, and American dealers travel to Europe and buy European minerals. So every crystal travels before it finally reaches your hand. People often assume you must get crystals cheaper at the gem shows. I wish it were that simple. That is probably one of the biggest myths in our industry. Yes, you can find cheap crystals, but cheap and high quality really go together. We don't travel across the world looking for the cheapest crystals. We travel across the world looking for the best crystals at the fairest possible price. If the quality is poor, we walk away. If the quality is exceptional, but the price doesn't make sense, we also walk away. Every purchase has to survive far more than the sticker price. We have to take into consideration the cost of flights, trains, rental cars, fuel, hotels, food, international shipping, international customs, brokerage fees, packing, insurance, warehousing. Every single crystal carries that journey before it even reaches our customers. That's why every crystal is hand-selected, not because it's the easiest way, but because we believe it's the right way. Also, one must take into consideration that every crystal shop also has different overheads. Every business is different, and that's okay. Price matters, but so does honesty. Which brings me to something I care about even more than the pricing: transparency and education. When I first fell in love with crystals, I knew almost nothing about crystals. I wasn't a crystal expert. I was simply that strange little girl growing up in South Africa who filled her pockets with rocks. People laughed at me, I was bullied, but I couldn't stop collecting them. Years later, after immigrating to Canada, I went through one of the darkest periods of my life. I struggled to fit in. I felt like I lost my identity. Then one day, I picked up an ordinary piece of rose quartz from a garden bed. That little stone changed everything and led me to studying and researching the geology of crystals and minerals. It led me to research mining, crystal localities, and eventually it led me here. Crystals quite literally help save my life. So when people tell me they don't believe in the healing power of crystals, I completely respect that. Not everyone has had the same journey, but I hope people can also respect those of us who have, because every crystal carries a story. The story of where it was formed, who mined it, who carried it across the world, who discovered it, and eventually whose life it touches next. Day 3 reminded me that every gem show teaches us something. Sometimes we find incredible crystals, sometimes we find incredible people. Sometimes we simply find new questions that lead us to better answers. And that's exactly why we keep coming back. Because the moment you think you've learned everything, the earth quietly reminds you there's always another story waiting to be discovered. One thing I've learned over the years is that every gem show teaches me something new. I don't come here believing I know everything. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I come here to ask questions, to listen, to challenge what I think I know, to learn from miners who have spent generations working the earth, from geologists who understand the chemistry behind every crystal, and from mineral collectors who have spent decades studying specimens most people will never see in person. Today was one of those days. Most of our conversations centered around smoky quartz, irradiated smoky quartz, and the incredibly rare Morayan quartz. From a distance, they can look very similar, but scientifically, they are not the same. Natural smoky quartz is still quartz, silicon dioxide, and its color develops from natural radiation interacting with trace amounts of aluminum in the crystal over immense geological time. Morayan quartz, however, is the name traditionally used for an exceptionally dark variety of natural smoky quartz. In mineralogy, there isn't a separate mineral species called Morayan. It's considered a very dark natural smoky quartz rather than a different type of quartz altogether. Because the term is sometimes used inconsistently in the trade, it's important to ask questions about a specimen's origin and whether any treatment has been applied. That's why transparency matters. One of our Brazilian vendors we visited today immediately told us his crystals had been gamma irradiated. He didn't try to make them as something rarer. He explained exactly what they were. That honesty meant everything to me. Those are the people we want to work with. Because when our customers ask questions, we want to be able to answer them truthfully. People sometimes ask why we spend so much money traveling across the world. The answer is simple. You can't replace relationships. You can't replace standing in front of the miner who dug the crystal out of the ground. You can't replace asking questions face to face. And you certainly can't replace holding 20 specimens in your hands before choosing the one that eventually becomes part of someone else's collection. That's why we travel, not because it's glamorous. Believe me, there's nothing glamorous about hauling wagons in 35-degree heat, living out of suitcases, especially when 2 of them are still missing, walking 20 kilometers a day, and spending weeks away from home. We do it because we believe our customers deserve more than simply ordering from a catalog. They deserve crystals with a story. When I first started collecting rocks in South Africa, I never imagined that little girl with stones in her pockets would one day travel the world searching for some of Earth's most beautiful creations. Back then in South Africa, as a little kid, I was thought to be strange. Today, I smile at that, because those rocks eventually led me here. They carried me through one of the darkest periods of my life after immigrating to Canada. Crystals gave me something to learn, something to focus on, something beautiful to believe in when I desperately needed hope. Whether you believe crystals have healing properties or simply admire them for their geology, I don't think that really matters. What matters is respecting each other's journey. Every one of us finds healing in different places. Mine just happened to be found in the earth. Every crystal we buy now reminds me why we do this. It isn't just another product. It's millions of years of geological history. It's a miner's hard work. It's a family's livelihood. It's the story of a country. It's the friendships we've built around the world. And one day, it becomes part of someone else's story. Maybe it's the crystal that helps someone through a difficult chapter. Maybe it's the specimen that inspires a future geologist. Maybe it simply sits on a shelf and reminds someone of a special moment in their life. Whatever its purpose, its story never really ends. It simply changes hands. And that's exactly why we continue traveling the world. One crystal, one friendship, and one story at a time. At the end of the day, that's our responsibility, not just to sell beautiful crystals, but to understand them, ask questions when we are unsure, and always pass on accurate information. Every gem show makes us better at doing exactly that. And today is what we've learned at the Sainte-Marie Gem Show. So merci beaucoup. Au revoir.